I would like to call the meeting of the Historic Resource Commission on July 7, 2016. I can't see the time, it's too far back, but anyway, you've got it, okay? Will the secretary please call the roll?
Alberta Christie.
Here.
Philip Schaefer.
Here.
Lawrence Hitterdale.
Here.
Sean Coolidge.
Here.
Mike Tardif.
Here.
Lynette Verino.
Here.
Edward Marashi.
Here.
Monica Garcia.
Here.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Okay, if everyone would please rise, and our pledge will be led by Commissioner Verino.
Ready to begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Now we would like to go to public comments. Does a member of the public have any public comments on non-agendized items? If you do, you may fill out a card and please give it to our secretary. And no public comments? Okay, all right, fine. Then we go to the next consent calendar.
I move approval of the minutes, the consent calendar.
There is a second.
Second.
Moved by Commissioner Schaefer, second by Commissioner Verino. All those in favor?
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, next item on the, is the Commissioner's communication disclosure. Is that right?
No, the business.
I'm looking at the business calendar, so, wait, okay. I back up, let me back up, so I have two different things here now, okay? So business calendar, on the elected of a chairperson and vice chairperson to serve on the Historic Resource Commission for the 2016-2017 term. We will take up, first take up the selection of the chairperson for the 2016-17 term. The floor is now open for nomination for chair. Commissioner, is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, second by Commissioner Heatherdale, and second by Commissioner Tarath. All those in favor? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you, guys. Okay, the nominations now are, the floor is open for the vice chair, and we will take the nominations for vice chair. Okay?
I'd like to nominate Philip Schaefer for vice chair.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
A second. Seconded by Commissioner Coolidge. Nominated by Commissioner Coolidge, seconded by Commissioner Marashi. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Congratulations, Phil. Welcome aboard. Okay. Now back to the other business part of the calendar. Okay, this is where the next item is the commissioner's communication disclosure. Do we have any commissioners who have anything they wish to disclose in regard with items on today's agenda? Commissioner Marashi?
I do. I'm going to abstain from the vote for the Santa Clara House because I'm within the 500 feet of notification, just so that it's not a conflict of interest. I also did go see the house and went inside and talked to the realtor and got to know the property pretty well.
Okay. I also went to visit the property and on the Santa Clara Avenue address that's coming to us for a recommended action. Anyone else? Okay, All right. Okay, the public hearing. This is the time and place for public hearing on item number, is that 2016-01? Is that the item number? Application for historic register? Mine has 01.
Good evening, Commissioners and Chair.
Holly, hold on. Mine has 01. Is it 07?
01.
Is it 01? Yeah.
Oh,
that's
you
what
have to vote on the required continuance,
Okay,
but then we do 01.
okay, we'll now have the staff report, okay? Where'd she go? We now call for the,
Okay, so for,
hold on, you only have one.
This is,
Okay, Holly, hold on 1 second.
we're not doing two.
The first item was continued.
Yeah, it's
But we need to
continued.
vote on it. It's a recommended action.
Where, which one is that one? This one. This one, okay, all right. Okay, here we go. All right, let's back up just a little bit, okay. This is for the public hearing on Historic Resource Commissioner's application to 2016-07. It's the recommended action that we continue this indefinitely at the request of staff. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Haredale, second by Commissioner Tarr.
I have a question, I'm sorry to disturb everybody. I'm
Sure.
not familiar with the,
Are-
because this is our property and it says continuing indefinitely at the request of the staff. Are we entitled to know why?
Okay, hold on, I will ask the staff. Holly, could you please answer the questions, because that was one of my questions. Okay.
yes, I did contact the applicant, so I don't know what the miscommunication was, but the applicant is applying to demolish the garage, the detached garage to the rear of the property, and we believe that we can work with the applicant to achieve disabled access to the rear of the property without having to take that action. And if that's the case, then we would want to work with the applicant first before we come to this body for a demolition request.
Okay.
Council.
Should I come over to make a comment?
Is it all right that we bring them? Sure, come
Can we
on.
ask staff questions?
Yeah.
before we get the applicant?
We submitted the
happened?
application, I believe, in before April meeting, and we it took us this long to get in here. And actually, we went around because I love the historic nature of the property. And as I thought, we have been in communication, so they know my feeling about it, that I really, really want to preserve it. That was my intent, to keep the uniqueness in there. But at the same time, as I mentioned, that I need a ramp for myself. And in the future, if we want to change the zoning to business, that's another requirement. So I don't want to demolish it. I want to take it out of historic. So if there is any option that the Historic Society can help me to remove it, actually I'm going to remove the garage, but demolition is not the purpose. It's a matter of putting a ADA ramp in there, and then keeping my options, because I have the only historic tree in the city of Santa Ana, and the garage is very rare also. So my question was, why should these two only in this property become historic? And just remove it from historic, then I work with the Historic Society to find the best option. But at the same time, we cannot wait 4 months for the next meeting and the next meeting, because the word indefinitely just scares me off. I just want to know when. So when can we decide, either yes or no?
Okay.
Thank you.
We'll have staff. Commissioner Moreno has a question for Holly.
Do you want me to take that, Holly? All right. If you so desire, you could continue it to a date certain. We just have not met with the applicant, so you could continue it to your next meeting.
Okay, all right, that's a suggestion. Commissioner Barrino has a question for staff. Holly?
Maybe it was premature because you haven't met, so your intent on continuing it definitely was because you wanted to keep it on the registry and try to work out the details of the ramp and the
Correct.
conversion and the garage
Correct.
with the applicant.
Yes.
So after the meeting, there still may be the intent by the applicant to remove it. That dialogue needs to happen.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And one more point. The location I picked is least disturbing to the house because it's very important for me to keep it as the way it is. I need the ramp, so I picked the back end so it doesn't disturb the nature of the house and everybody, including me, can enjoy a historic Spanish home. That's why when I painted it, I went to the palette, Hispanic, and I tried to stay in the era and the whole thing to keep the nature of it. Thank you.
Okay,
Thank you.
I suggest that we, staff work with the applicant and then bring it back to us on our next meeting of October 6th to do that. Is there a motion to that effect?
Well, there's a motion to continue indefinitely.
To continue it to,
Indefinitely. So they have to.
If you would like, you could modify the motion.
okay? There to modify,
You already made the motion, is that okay with you?
Yes, I'm fine.
okay?
Modify the second
Okay,
in accordance.
okay. All those in favor of the staff working with the applicant and to bring it back to us on October 6th, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
Please work with staff.
Sure.
Okay. Now.
Okay, good evening, Commissioners. Tonight I bring before you Historic Resource Commission Application and Categorization 2016-01. It's the request of the applicants to have the property at 525 West Santa Clara Avenue designated to the Santa Ana Register in the key category. If you recall, the key category requires that it be a distinctive architectural style, quality, or a significant period, represents a significant period in the history of the city, or is associated with a significant person or event. Here is the Dr. Ashmore House at 525 West Santa Clara. It is a Spanish colonial style. You can find that by its red roof tile, and it does have the very old tiles atop of it. And it also has the open arches from the front porch area and a attached porte-cochere. What is unusual about the property, however, is the front-facing tripartite window on the left-hand side. That's not very atypical of Spanish colonial in that configuration. But it is original to the house, and it is, the house overall is a very good architectural quality, and it's in excellent condition. I want to talk a little bit more about the background of the house. It was first built for Dr. Frank Ashmore, who was a very prominent physician and surgeon in the area, who had his offices in downtown Santa Ana. He was born in China, and although he was not Chinese, his family was staying in China because his father was a missionary, a Baptist missionary in China, and he was the very first person to translate the Bible into Chinese language. And Dr. Frank Ashmore, his son, also was very active in the community and his church. He was also a very avid woodworker. That was his hobby, and so that's why in the 1930s he had a small shed or workshop constructed in the rear of the property that allowed him to enjoy his hobby out of the garage and driveway area so as not to bother the wife of the house. And so he, again, was a very avid woodworker, and so that wood shed at the back of the property is properly permitted. Because of the association with Dr. Ashmore and because it is a distinctive architectural quality, we recommend approval to the Santa Ana Historic Register of Historical Properties. Thank you. If you have questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Okay. Commissioner Schaefer?
Holly, I know the current owner of the house replaced that front window on the living room, and it was previously had been replaced with an ugly aluminum window, so it certainly looks better today. But do we have any old photographs? Do we know that this window is similar to what was originally there in terms of its
I
layout?
did look for the old photographs, 'cause that's one of the first things I do to see if there have been any changes to it. I saw no permits, and there were no old photographs of this particular property that didn't show a different configuration.
Okay, so I know it's a wood window now, which is more appropriate to the house, but I didn't know if the vertical divisions that are in that window are the way it was originally or not.
I can only assume that it was, since there were no permits on there and I had no record showing what the property originally looked like.
Okay.
Heidi, would you comment? We have two different names, Lou and then Wen. Okay. Lou is the broker, right? And the owner actually is Miss Wen, I understand.
Correct. Ms. Nguyen is on the title of the property. They are present tonight. Mr. Liu is Ms. Nguyen's wife. Ms. Nguyen is Dr. Mr. Liu's wife. I'm so confused today. It's just been a busy day. But yes, they are a married couple, and he is also representing the sale of this property. So he brought in the paperwork and such, so he served as an applicant and my primary contact for the application, but it would be Jamie Nguyen who would sign the actual documents.
So those documents will reflect her.
Correct.
And coming, I wanted to point that out on that because the two different names
Right.
that we're giving on the write-up. Okay. Now that does any commissioner have any comments here? We do have the applicants. Ms. Wen or Mr. Liu, would you like to say anything? It's not necessary, but we give. Okay.
Yeah, I actually just want to add it, the part that.
You want to come, please?
Oh, hello everyone. My name is Albert Liu. I just want to add it one part that Commissioner Schaffer just mentioned about a window in the front. We did get a permit to replace it, and the frame, the actual outside frame of the window is the original member that's attached to the house. We just replaced the middle, the interior members that was previously replaced by the previous owner with aluminum, which we brought back to wood. That's all.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Well, the public hearing is now closed, okay? And I just want to say thank you so much for taking this action because of the fact we do notice that it is up for sale and that you wanted to get that so that the new owners know how important and historic piece of property that is in here in Santa Ana, and we'll keep it, in its historic state. So we want to thank you so much for taking this action to assure that we're not going to lose one of our historic properties on there. Okay. If not, Commissioner, now like to entertain a motion. Commissioner Garcia.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the following. Number one, adopt a resolution approving the Historic Resources Commission application number 2016-01 and Historic Register categorization number 2016-01. And second, number two, recommend that the City Council authorize the City Manager and Clerk of the Council to execute the attached land-back agreement with Jamie Nguyen, subject to non-substantive changes approved by the City Manager and the City Attorney.
Is there a second? Okay, moved by Commissioner Garcia, second by Commissioner Coolidge. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you so much. We applaud you. Come on, guys. Everybody applaud them. This is such a celebratory. Thank you so much. We appreciate that.
That's why you're my favorite commission.
Mm-hmm.
You applaud.
Well, it is a celebration, like,
It is.
you know, that they're taking this action to ensure that whoever buys that property, you know, come in and appreciate it, you know, the way that we do and doing that. So we just thank them for taking these steps. Okay. Okay, and the next is the work study.
I don't know if this is a work study per se, but Holly and I are going to do a little presentation for you on historic districts in Santa Ana style. And we loved this photograph. It's Main Street. It's got these wonderful old trucks in it, and the old movie theater marquee. It's just perfect. But do you have the sticker? Do you have the clicker open? You got the clicker.
No.
All right, we haven't rehearsed it. Typically, we think about historic districts as someplace that's all historic buildings. It's continuous. It's pristine. It's Georgetown, right? I mean, that's what we think, and that they have incredible amount of restrictions and all kinds of covenants and things in that area. And and in many cases, historic preservation has, and particularly districts, have gotten a bad rap. Let's go on to the next slide. One of the most important things to think about in terms of historic preservation, and I thought we'd replace this slide because I had this great slide of the North Baker property, the manufactured house there that we had there, but inappropriate development. Wouldn't you call that? What would you call that? Okay, all right. But what we want to do, how we want to think about historic districts is what are the gems? What are the landmarks within them? What are the
Inappropriate developments and keys and contributives.
Yeah, and the contributing structures, those things that they're not a landmark status, and they might not even be eligible for being nominated that way, but they are something that it's truly...
It contributes to the ambiance of the street, the setbacks, the landscape, the style, a period of development is all fitting within the district.
And the sum is, it's like perfect example of the old saying, the sum is greater than the individual parts when we're looking at historic districts. In our slide, in this next slide is supposed to show you that there's many different ways to get to preservation activities, and we do have in our city we have historic districts, we have individual landmarks, or individual designations, but we also have some other ones that are a little
Different.
More, varied, let's say,
Yeah,
right?
so these are all different ways that we can preserve the properties or a neighborhood, but there's a lot of different ways that we can do that.
And we thought we'd give you, we'd go for a quiz here, and we'd ask you, this is what neighborhood, what is this here? This is downtown Santa Ana. Do you guys know? Holly?
What do we use to preserve this area? This one's preserved by the National Register of Historic Places.
And that is the least protective of any sort of designation.
Right.
I want you to really understand that. We think, there's a tremendous amount of prestige that goes with a National Register, being on the National Register of Historic Places, but there's absolutely no regulation. The feds depend on us at the local level to protect our own structures, and they really have given us that responsibility, and it's an important responsibility as well.
Yeah, that's a very, very big point, because even though our downtown Santa Ana is on the National Register of Historic Places, I mean, like she said, the prestige that goes with that, it's known nationwide as significant to the whole country. But it means nothing because it doesn't protect any structure, even from demolition.
I have a question. So do we have on our register and the national, or is it just the I mean, there's got to be something there, right? Are we on both registries?
Yes. Yeah.
In order to protect us, right?
Right, right.
Okay.
That's why, I mean, we want to, but we want to make sure that you guys understand, local designations are typically the first step in terms of getting onto the National Register, but it's really the most important step. It is really, really the most important step because it's the only one that has any teeth, except for a little quirk we're going to talk about later, or a few. Henninger Park.
Do you know what protects that? It's a thing called zoning. Henninger Park was given a specific development number 40 back before we had even a historic code, before we had anything that we were able to designate historic properties. The neighborhood came and said, we want to be historic. And we said, we don't have a way. There's no way. We can't create a district. Can't put properties on a register because we don't have one. So we created a zoning that acts exactly the same as a historic district.
And, but sometimes it doesn't do quite the same as what we would like for it to do. And we're going to talk about that again and again, because we just told you that the National Register designation doesn't do anything. Well, we lied, sort of. The National Registry, being on the National Register is something that in state regulations for certain kinds of elements, it may protect us. So, for example, I think probably the most important one that we've looked at, and it's a local example of where we missed out because we weren't, is North Baker Street. Does anybody know North Baker Street property? 1104?
1108.
Is it 1108?
1108 North Baker, AKA the Abomination.
I was just going to say, is that the manufactured house?
It's a manufactured home that unfortunately there are regulations that precluded even our zoning and design guidelines from being implemented. And we were required by law to allow that manufactured home. And so what Candida is saying is that if it had been a historic district, we could have had a set of laws that could have precluded it. That's the only thing that would override that law.
That law. That law is written so, and state laws may be written that way. It says if it was in a district, it would, we wouldn't have had to issue those permits. So, so just keep that in mind. The next one we have is Washington Square. Anybody know what kind of designation we have for that? Again, that's a historic neighborhood, and in that process, that wasn't really adopted by the council. It wasn't necessarily even adopted by you. It's something that's been a policy of staff, but it doesn't have the weight of actually the city behind it, really. We do review We do review modifications to properties in that area, but it's just a policy that staff administers.
And actually, this is where 1108 North Baker is located.
I was just going to say, that property, Baker, is in Washington Square.
Right.
So what, I'm sure you're getting to this, but of course I want to know, what do we have to do to establish a district or whatever we have to do to have some kind of design policy? Because Holly knows I've complained about remuddles, I'll call them, that have been done that, you know, really destroy not only the property, but the neighboring properties and the fabric of the neighborhood.
And the fabric of the neighborhood. That's one thing that we are really starting, this is why we're here today, because we want to talk to you about historic districts, the adoption of historic districts. We have, our ordinance does allow us to adopt, it sets up standards and a process and findings to be made to adopt historic districts. Staff, and well, let's go on with our quiz here, and we'll get to it at the end. And East Side, anybody know what East Side is?
No, that's, no, what?
Okay, Holly?
Nothing.
Nothing. Well, it's a historic neighborhood. Again, it's one of these ones that's.
Yeah, it's got nothing.
It's administered by
It has
staff.
no protection because it's only staff, right? It's not
Right.
Policy.
district or-
Right, it's a policy decision. Again, the next, French Park.
Okay, that's a historic district.
Yes, it is.
And zoning.
And what?
And zoning protection. It has specific development 19 for all the same reasons that 40 was.
Okay,
Right.
this is where the problem was, because next to it is French Court, not too long. And the reason why I asked for this to come up is because in French Park, any changes have to go to the Architectural Review Board, right? And that board is set up by whom?
The neighborhood themselves.
Oh, so the neighborhood themselves has that. Okay, and somehow,
Well, let's talk.
well, okay,
Let's
so the-
talk about what would happen. Let's talk about what would happen if we have a I guess let's go on to the next slide, because I think that's Floral Park, right? What designation does Floral Park have?
it doesn't, none. Just homes that are there that are protected,
Okay.
but not as a district. So,
Correct.
All right. So, Park Santiago.
Same thing.
Okay. And, oh, wait a minute. We have one more, we do have one other,
Wilshire Square.
Wilshire Square, no, district, our other district, yes. Well, so I guess we kind of skipped through this one. I thought we were going to get to a slide of a district, but I guess we've gone through our districts. But we have another, if we do have a locally designated district, the Historic Preservation Commission, staff administers it, does minor modifications to, would approve minor modifications to historic properties. But when things become tricky, or if there are expansions above a certain size to a historic property or demolitions, in the historic district, they come to you. And you as a public body, it's noticed, it comes to you. So you play that role. And that's what we wanted to get across to you. Yes, in some of these zoning, when it's zoned, it doesn't necessarily, it goes to a neighborhood association as opposed to necessarily the city's commission. So that's a difference. And the neighborhood associations, do they necessarily have to have somebody that's a design person on them, or any variety of representation from the community?
No, they have
No.
no such requirements. Usually it's just leaders within their community that are willing to take on that role.
Right. And with the Historic Preservation Commission, again, with this sort of designation process, along with it comes an appeal process, which is if an applicant is concerned about, the decision that staff makes at our level, they can appeal it to you. If they're concerned about the decision that you make, ultimately, they can also appeal it to the city council. So there's this sort of process in how we're looking at laying down requirements or establishing requirements for how historic properties should be treated. The last one is the trick question here. So what designation is this? This is the Logan neighborhood.
I don't think it has one.
Well, you're right, but
But the good news is we're applying for a grant, and through that grant, we'll be able to create
hopefully.
Yes, with fingers crossed and eyes crossed and toes crossed, that we'll be able to complete a context statement for this Logan neighborhood and complete a National Register application, because it is the original barrio of Santa Ana. It was one of the original portals in all of California for Mexico and Mexicans to make a border crossing and come to the States. And it pretty much, the structures that remain are all still pretty intact to their original look and feel and size. And so we think it would make a really good nomination.
So I think do we have one more slide? I can't remember. Oh, Wilshire
do.
Square.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's Wilshire
okay.
Square.
Well, I guess I knew that was in there somewhere. I guess we want to conclude with, we have been asked or approached. I know there's been some people that are talking about what can we do to protect our neighborhoods? How can we become a historic neighborhood? What can we do? And as staff, and I hope that after this training, you as commissioners, as staff, we're really advocating that neighborhoods and communities look into the historic district designation process. It would be completing an application we know is not necessarily easy, but I've worked for communities where it was all done by volunteer effort. They did a great job, and the original survey that was done, and ultimately the first one that I worked on became the largest historic district in the country on the National Register. At one point, I don't know if it still is, but at one point it was because it had over 1,300 structures in it. So it's not an impossible thing to do. We really do want to encourage you, hopefully, and your neighbors, if they're interested in historic preservation. We do believe that this is the most effective way that we can approach it.
Yeah, at this time, the city just doesn't have the resources for city staff to be able to go out and perform the surveys or create the forms that are needed for those nominations. But Floral Park, for example, is currently beginning to work with Orange Coast College and students who are architecture students, and they're interested in helping them with their nomination form. So there's lots of different kinds of creative ways to get that documentation needed for the nomination. And we just want to pass on that there's ways that the residents themselves or volunteers or people in the community can actually take that on. It doesn't necessarily have to involve hiring a specialist, because they can be very expensive. But there are good creative ways to do it.
And we can provide you with the blank forms.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not the completed ones, but we can give you the blank forms.
Yeah, and we can review. So once, if a neighborhood was able to put together a nomination form, we are more than happy to review that form, make corrections or updates or whatever's needed to make a stronger application. And then we can work with the SHPO office, the State Historic Preservation Officer, to work with getting that nomination moved up to the federal level and getting noticed. So
Right.
we can provide that kind of help.
Right.
Commissioner Schaefer?
I have a question. Several years ago, this commission worked on design guidelines that would be adopted citywide. And they were designed to prevent this kind of thing from happening. So are those still in use, and why was something like this allowed in a neighborhood like Washington Square, which has a nice historic fabric to it?
Well, this is preempted by state law. State law says that you have to permit manufactured housing in any location that you would allow a single-family home, unless it's within a historic district. So that's why that was allowed, or that had to be allowed. It wasn't a matter of it was allowed. It had to be permitted. The city was obligated to issue the permits for that because that's what the state law says, that housing is very important in the state of California, and particularly affordable housing. And as a result, manufactured housing units have to be permitted in any location in which you can put a single-family house. The only thing we have control over is siding and roof materials. So they can't use metal siding and some of the roof materials that.
Yeah, so
you
this,
would
I
typically
realize
see.
this is putting the lipstick on a pig, but this was the best lipstick that we could get from them.
Isn't there language, though, in that housing law that also says it needs to meet, it needs to be in the same context of the surrounding homes? There's
No.
some
No,
vagueness
there's
in that,
nothing.
Not in the
village ruling.
manufactured housing no. It was one of those laws that was adopted by the state legislature. It's similar to some of the sober living laws. I mean, some of the, you have to allow, if you cannot discriminate or distinguish between certain types of residential uses in single-family neighborhoods or residential construction techniques in certain.
I'm sorry, I'm not done.
Oh, go ahead, you want to finish.
No, I'm sorry. So basically, what we're saying is if the neighborhood does not have a historic designation, let's say my mother-in-law's neighborhood,
Yeah.
they could build manufactured homes.
They could build a
If
could
her
put a
house burns
manufactured
down.
housing on that property, yes, on any lot in that neighborhood, yes. If
So they
it's
could
single
demolish
family.
her house, she could demolish her house and build a manufactured home. It has nothing, there's not circumstances of how it becomes vacant or the land is buildable.
Yes,
That's the rule.
that's the law.
The rule is because that if you were to purchase one of these, they're factory built, obviously. They come in on a large truck, so that you can purchase one of these for around $90,000.
Oh, I know, they look $90,000 too.
And so then the state's point of view is that it's more important to have housing that is affordable than to have stick-built homes. That's just the bottom line for them. Affordable housing was more important than the fabric of the neighborhood. We can't fight that, but we do have a tool that can help us with that, and one of those tools is a historic district.
Commissioner Torres?
Now, besides the manufactured housing that the state apparently mandates, I'll just call it that, would this also affect the granny flat issue?
Granny flats are also protected under state law. We are required to allow them in any R1 zone, but we were allowed to set all of our own standards for those. So we could say how big it could be, what it had to look like, where it could be on the lot, and we do have standards for that we've adopted by ordinance.
And actually, I'd like to add on to that. We currently have in place laws that regulate the location of granny flats, And probably one of the most compelling or regulatory component of that law that's in place right now is the adjacency to park areas. So when the city council adopted the standards for granny flats, which again, that was another issue where the state of California said that, we had to allow some sort of provision for granny flats in any single family neighborhood. But we could do design standards. The city council recognized that granny flats take up, backyard and private open space. And so related to that, we needed to have some other open space. And so that in areas that are underparked in our city, which many of our neighborhoods are underparked, that not parking for cars, but parking for recreational parks, then you had to, you could not build the second unit without going through a conditional use permit. I believe it's a conditional use permit.
Minor exception.
A minor exception, yes, a minor exception. So
I understand that there's a proposal to change the granny flats ordinance that we have now.
there was a proposal, there was a suggestion that we were going to be reviewing that and looking at that. That is off the table now. City staff is not looking at revising the granny flat ordinance at this time.
Thank you. Would this historic designation protect these neighborhoods in regards to the granny flat issue?
In regards to the granny flat issue, they don't address that it specifically. They would not prohibit the use of granny flats like the manufactured housing, but they would regulate the design and construction of them so that they would have to be consistent with the architecture of the home. So if you designed it as a shed in the back, that would be, or manufactured housing, that wouldn't be permitted. But if you made it look like the groomsmen housing over a carriage house over what was old stables that fit in context with the house itself and the neighborhood, then it could be permitted.
And we still use the same zoning standards that are in place. So if a lot is under R1, it's still subject to only 50% lot coverage, and so that may preclude being able to have a second unit as well.
Right.
Okay, great, thank you.
I have a question. Okay, so you have the district, so you have all these homes on that, and the homes are now, if the district goes through, designated as historic. Is that correct? Or do they still have to come before us to get that historic designation of each of those?
They would only have, if they were designated, the time that you would have to get the designation would not be the designation itself, but if they wanted to take advantage of the Mills Act contracts, then they would come before you.
Come before us.
But if they were within the district, if they wanted to do any major modifications, they would be required to get what we call a certificate of appropriateness. And that certificate of appropriateness would mean, they would have to be consistent, any development would have to be consistent with the guidelines. Things that would be larger than a certain size would come to you. If they wanted a variation from a specific design guideline that we had adopted and in place, it would have to come to you. It's just like, it'd be that process where if it's small, staff can approve it. If not, it has to go to you. And if they don't like what you say, it goes to the council.
Okay, very good. And the fees for this?
There is no fee for historic districts.
So all they do is do the legwork, the application, the legwork, is that correct?
Mm-hmm.
And
That's
then
correct.
submit it to
The city,
the city,
Mm-hmm.
and then it
planning
comes-
staff, actually.
Planning staff? Okay.
Historic preservation staff.
And then we
And then
take
it
it from
comes
there.
to us, right?
Yes,
And then we send it up to the council.
and then it goes to the council, yes.
So no fees, protecting the property, you know, in a historic state to protect the neighborhood and so forth. And you need everybody to sign every one of the homes to agree with this district, or how does that
No,
work?
we use 50% as the criteria. So if there were 50% that
We went over, we went through this.
that do not object. So, for example, if we send out notices, we don't require that 50% of the people say, I want in, or that, we get answers from everyone. We're just looking to see the sheer number. If we don't get more than 50% total number of people objecting, we consider that a consent to move forward.
Okay, very good, very good. I mean, on the,
Could you briefly outline what is in the package? Like, if my neighborhood wanted to do this, what would they have to do? Do they have to take a
They would
photo
have
of
to
the
come
house? Do
they should come and talk to us, and what they would need to do is complete a survey of every structure in your neighborhood, every lot.
Structure?
Yes.
Every lot and every structure on that lot. So we have a form which is used by us, but it's also used by the state and the federal and the National Park Service in evaluating historic resources, and we all use the same form, and you would be required to fill out the form. We can, in one community that I worked with, we had the form digitally, so people did it, were able to do it, fill it out like on an Excel spreadsheet, and then it would like crank it in. Even the pictures, it cranked it into the forms that we had to have. It's very important to have the photographs, and it's very important to have good, clear photographs, because you're establishing the baseline for what's there now. And future actions. But yes, I mean, staff is willing to help you out in terms of showing you how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But and especially if you had if you have some interest in it, please let us know.
I have a question. So, what type of opposition would there be if a neighborhood were to come together and they were to say, "Hey, like we want to make this area, historic," and it sounds like there is like a layer of restrictions on top that prevent it. It's like downtown Orange, and they say, "Oh, like it's great to live there. It's so expensive, but you can't do anything. You can't add a satellite dish. You can't do that." What type of arguments, what type of like neighborhoods are gonna, you're gonna have like 5 or 6 people who are like, yeah, let's do this, and then the majority who are uninformed are like, I don't want this. I don't want more legislation. I don't want restrictions. This is my property. I want to do what I want. Is there any type of that rhetoric that arises when a group tries to?
Yeah, it does. I mean, it does. I've been through several of these in other communities that I've worked for, several district designation processes in other communities that I've worked for. And Holly, I think you have too, right?
Yes, and actually we have one of the most lenient, that's not the right word, but the most unrestrictive programs that there is, because so much of it is allowed to be approved by staff. We have this body adopted a resolution some years ago that gave us full authority to act on minor repairs and alterations and even small additions if they're non-visible. And because of that, we've really shown the community that it's not going to be a barrier for them to do some changes or updates or repairs. However, there is still a group who is very property rights advocates who say, nobody's going to tell me what I can do with my house. If I want to add a second story, I'm going to do it. Those are the ones who don't want to have that. And there's also a group of people who unfortunately are misinformed that believe that having a historic a designation attached to your property is somehow going to make it more difficult to sell down the line. And Phil could tell you right there, that can't be further from the truth.
Well, I think though, too, a lot of it is education, and there's some really, if you want to establish a historic, I know you just said you were talking about it, again, it's going to be on your watch. I've looked at this, but I've now owned 2 historic houses, but I've looked at it from both angles. And in one instance, I was part of that group that was advocating for having our area designated a district. And we did, it was our responsibility to go out there and talk to people about it and tell them what we believed. And we were able to convince people to do that. So it's just, some of it will be the responsibility of the neighborhood itself. And it may be that district lines get drawn, and in this case, in the case that I experienced, they got drawn around certain, in certain places, and certain properties were left in and certain properties were left out because of, property owner sentiments. But it's, we can help you with, we can give you some information. There's lots of stuff online from the National Park Service that operates the Office of Historic Preservation. So, no, but we wanted to talk to you about this because we have heard that people were interested in extending the historic neighborhood program, that people were concerned about and we did want to approach you in that we really do firmly believe that the best resource or tool that we have it right now, and that's the historic district. It's in our code. So think about it. You may want to, if any of you have any questions about it and you think about them later, we'd be more than happy to talk to you, either Holly or I.
Are you going out to the neighborhoods that we see, East Side, Williamson Square, Floral Park, I'm sure, but Park Santiago and all the rest of them? Are you talking to the neighborhood leaders?
We would be willing to go if invited, yes.
Would you do me a favor and let them know, because they were very, very interested.
Okay.
And there, but just reach out to them and to let them know, because of the fact that the fiasco came with French Park and French Court when we had that major discussion with the remodeling of a home and so forth.
Okay.
Reach out to them, because you do have a very high interest out there right now with our historic preservation, and our commissioners talking to different people, especially when we go on these home tours, and to let them know about this. And I also want to thank you for the advertisement of our commission meeting that was in the Register today. That was one on that, to let them know that we do. Thank you for taking my suggestion and doing that. I appreciate that, because people that are coming in or want to, have something unique and want to save, that they want to invest their, that they've invested their money in, and they don't want to have the nightmare like Washington Square, because with that manufactured home, because once again, you're looking at what's the definition of low-income housing. It's the same kind of state requirement as their designation of what is a livable space, with the overcrowding, because of the fact that they're saying that you can have so many people in a 5-bedroom home of over 24, I believe, living there, because of the fact of the high rates of housing that's coming in. So very, very, very high interest in that. And I, for one, would like to see us go forward, get this information out, and do the education that's out there to protect us.
Should that be, I agree with that there
Mhm.
needs to be the communication, but I don't know that it should be the planning department that should be doing
Well,
that. The outreach should be done by our neighborhood outreach people in the
People.
Right,
city.
we
That's
can,
what I'm
That should
saying.
be
we have
our
neighborhood
planning
outreach
staff.
people.
I hate to take time
Yes.
away from what you guys need to do
Thank you.
on your daily work to be reaching out, when that really should be done by a different body in the city. So maybe you can
Work with them.
Right.
discuss that
We're
with
not,
them.
we're not we are regulators. I mean, we are in charge of enforcing the law. But we don't necessarily, it's not our role necessarily to go out there and wave the flag. That's not what we do. But we can contact neighborhood improvement.
Initiatives.
And we can ask them, we can tell them that staff is available to explain the historic preservation ordinance and how it may or may not affect different neighborhoods in the community. And we would be willing to go to their meetings if they would like us to.
That would be great. Everybody holding hands, joining hands together to get it out there.
I got a question. Is there any documentation or information online? Is there like a web page on the city's site that kind of outlines like what the two districts that we have and kind of seeding the public, saying, hey, like if you're interested, contact you? Or
Not really. We have the ordinance is online, but
it's not marketing.
no, it's not marketing. It's there. But yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I would certainly love to see you give a presentation at the Comlink meeting in front of all the neighborhoods that come to that meeting.
Okay. Well, if we're invited, we'll come. We'll come.
He's one of the vice chairs. He's inviting you.
Oh, okay.
I'll make sure it happens.
All right. Thank you. All right.
Okay.
Well, thank you very much. If you have any other questions, please feel free to contact either Holly or I.
Thank you so
Holly,
much, Candia, and thank you, Holly, for that. Okay, any other questions from the commissioners?
All right.
Okay, all right, moving along. Since we do not have any, we're all here. No one's out, so we don't need to go. Any other staff member comments at this time?
No, thank you.
Okay,
Except I want to thank Ryan Hodge for coming to our meeting tonight.
Ryan.
He was pinch hitting for us.
Welcome, Ryan. We appreciate it. Okay. Any Historic Resource Commissioners' comments, starting?
Again, I just want to thank the homeowners. Congratulations, and thank you for putting the house up. Staff, thank you very much for the excellent presentation on the historic districts. And congratulations to Commissioners Alberta Christie and Phil Schaefer for being elected chairperson and vice chairperson. That's it.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
I only have my usual plug for every meeting, which is if you haven't joined the Savannah Historical Preservation Society, please do. You can go on their website at savannahhistory.com. Individual membership starts at $20, so please contribute to the preservation of our city. That's it.
Commissioner Thomas.
I would like to associate myself with Edward's comments. Thank you all, and congratulations to the chair and vice chair.
Commissioner Carino.
Just congratulations, Alberta, Phil, on your new positions, or not
New
your
year.
new, but your
New year.
continuation of your chair position.
That's it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Commissioner Heatherdown.
Well, I'll just repeat what we said. I said thank staff for the presentation. Very clarifying. I know much more about this now than I did before. Thanks to Mr. Liu and Ms. Lynn for putting the house on the designation, and thanks to our new officers, our chair and vice chair, for stepping up to accept this additional. Thank you.
Commissioner Coolidge.
I'd like to echo the statements of my fellow commissioners and thank everyone for coming out tonight. Thank you for the excellent presentation. I really, really like that photo that's on the cover. It describes a cosmopolitan downtown that, you know, we all someday believe, you know, may come again. I mean, downtown's great as it is now. One thing is, if you know, I have a friend. He's on another commission for the city, but he's a fanatic about historic architecture, and I think he's building a website, but he has an Instagram account called Historic Santa Ana, and he travels the city and just takes photos of some of those amazing buildings around. So if you know, while we're all here and we all share an interest in architecture and design, it's a great piece to follow. But I just want to thank everyone and remind everyone, as always, that the downtown Santa Ana Farmers Market takes place this Sunday, every Sunday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. And yeah, hope to see you all there. Thank you very much for your time. And good night.
Commissioner Schaefer?
Congratulations, Alberta, for
Thank you.
being reelected. And I just want to add a couple things. Number one, I hit Sean's shoulder because one of the photos in the presentation he took, and so I thought he was complimenting himself when I hit him, but his was buried in it wasn't on the cover. It was another one. Anyway, two neighborhoods I think you should also add to your list are the West Floral Park and Jack Fisher Park, which are really part of the greater Floral Park neighborhood. But not that they would be left out, because we don't want to see mobile homes in those neighborhoods either, and we want to make sure that any remodeling that's done is appropriate and blends in with the neighborhood. There's some very nice remodels that have been done, but I know Park Santiago has a couple warts over there that look really terrible, and I would hate to have that across the street from my house. So I commend the city for bringing this to our attention, and I would really encourage neighborhoods, I know there's not a lot of public out here, but neighborhoods to really consider the value that this can bring, because as a realtor that works in Santa Ana and specifically in vintage homes, being on the Mills Act, on the Historic Registry, does make a difference in the value of your property. It's in a positive way, a very positive way. And then the only other thing I want to mention is just Bowers Museum has a fun thing going on Thursdays. If you're not doing anything, I think they call it Thirsty Thursdays, and they have like hands-on art type stuff you can do, and it's sort of a fun thing. So I think my wife and I are going over there tonight. That's it.
Thank you. Okay. I just want to say thank you all for electing me chair on this, and I will really do better. Especially on that. But isn't it nice that Santa Ana is going back to historic days? Look at the pancake breakfast, over 1,000 people there. We're making an impression on this city, you know, like coming in to go back to times to bring people together, and that was a tremendous success, you know, that, you know, Hassan is rubbing off on the city, you know? And all of you commissioners out there really preaching historic preservation. But that was so much fun, you know, being out there for that breakfast and people dressing up during the time of that. That was so cool that was there. Once again, I'd like to congratulate Mr. Liu and your wife, Ms. Flynn, that's on there. And then for the Maliks to please work with the staff on this, because it is coming back to us at our next meeting that will be coming up. Okay, and with that, our next regularly scheduled meeting will be on Thursday, October 6th, 2016 at 4:30 in the council chambers. And with that, meeting is adjourned. Thank you all.